Welcome to the dynamics of everyday life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This week I've gone with a nod to a Kylie classic, and I do mean the Princess of Pop, Kylie Minogue, quite clearly the original, although my daughter might disagree. Anyway, picture the scene. Someone says something to you, and at the time, you laugh it off. Maybe it even feels like it bounces straight off you. And then, 3 days later, you're emptying the dishwasher and replaying it in your head thinking, hang on a minute, what did they mean by that? Did they mean what I think they meant? It happens all the time. Someone makes a slightly offhand comment, the tone's a bit ambiguous, and in the moment you weren't bothered. Until you were. And then suddenly it's living rent-free in your head and you can't think about anything else. And, if you're anything like me, you won't just replay it once. Oh no. You'll go back over it, analyse the tone, rerun the conversation, possibly draft a response you're never actually going to send. Just me? Maybe not. Some of us don't need much to work with. We can turn a throwaway comment into a full-blown emotional situation in under 30 seconds. I've still not forgotten a comment one of my friends made when I was planning my wedding, and this is over 20 years ago now. I was organising bridesmaids' dresses and trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone. I wasn't expecting them to pay, I was choosing things that would flatter everyone, I was getting people involved. And this friend, one of my bridesmaids, was travelling to the fitting and said something about there being trouble if they didn't like what I'd chosen. And at the time, I laughed it off. But afterwards, I really couldn't let it go. Because in my mind, I'd worked so hard not to be that person. So to be cast in that role anyway, yeah, I didn't take that especially well. Outwardly, fine. Internally, absolutely not fine. Now, most comments pass straight through us. There's so much going on in our lives that we just can't retain everything that's said to us. But some, they absolutely don't. And, as with my example, it's rarely about the comment itself, which is more than a bit irritating because it would be so much easier if it was just about what they said. We could decide they were rude and get on with our lives. The thing is, these comments hook into something that's already there. They don't land on neutral ground. They land on history. Old sensitivities, familiar feelings, not good enough, too much, not taken seriously, overlooked. I mean, I'm sure you can add your own in here. In my case, it was a time when a lot of my friends were getting married, and I'd seen some fairly interesting bride-to-be behaviour. And I really did not want to be like that. So I tried very hard not to be. I possibly even overcompensated. So for this friend to suggest that I was being like that really stung. Because it tapped straight into narratives I was already carrying. Difficult, selfish, ungrateful. I've got quite a collection, if I'm honest. Some people collect shoes. I collect unhelpful internal narratives. It's really quite something. So it's less like a fresh wound and more like someone prodding a bruise that's already there. There's a phrase people use here, and loath as I am to use these kind of lines, this one does have some value. What you say is all about you. How I hear it, that's all about me. Someone might say something a bit clumsy, but what we hear? Well, that's often something much sharper, You're ambitious becomes, you're unrealistic. Who do you think you are? You've changed becomes, I don't like who you are now. Maybe we can't be friends anymore. So there's a gap, often quite a big one, between what was said and what was heard. And we don't tend to fill that gap with generosity. We fill it with, well, whatever we already believe about ourselves on a bad day. And at that point, we're no longer responding to the comment. That's long gone. We're responding to what it became inside us. Ambiguity is basically rocket fuel here. If something is clearly rude, it's actually easier. You can dismiss it. You might still be annoyed, but it doesn't tend to linger in quite the same way. But if it's vague, slightly off, then your brain gets to work, because our brains hate not knowing. So we fill in the blanks, and we don't go, I'm sure they meant that in the most kind and generous way possible. We go the other way entirely. So why can't we let it go? Well, it's because it's unfinished. The loop isn't closed. It's emotionally charged. And it links to something older, a sleeping dragon that's just been prodded. And so it keeps circling. Not because the comment was that important, but because what it touched is. And at some point, it stops being about the person who made the comment. They may have been clumsy, careless, maybe even a bit off. But the staying power, that's us. Which is deeply inconvenient, because it would be much nicer if we could keep it as a neat little story about them being slightly irritating. Now, a caveat. Sometimes people do say loaded things. We are not imagining everything. And maybe my example illustrates a disconnect that was already building between me and that friend. We're not in each other's lives anymore, which is a shame. But these things happen. So, what do we do with all of this? Well, if you're already ruminating, and let's be honest, you probably are, it can help to name what you actually heard. Not the words, the meaning you gave it. Ask yourself where you felt that before. Aha, hello, my old friend. Back again, I see. And if your answer is everywhere, that's also useful information. Reality check the comment. Was it definitely what you think it was? And then decide whether it needs action. Do you want to clarify it? Can you let it go? Or is this actually about understanding yourself a bit better? Because sometimes it isn't to do with actually getting over it. It's understanding why it landed so well in the first place. So, yes, it might have been just a comment. But if it's still with you 3 days later, it's probably not just about that. And yes, you're going to think about it again later. Sorry about that. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Dynamics of Everyday Life. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. As well as producing this podcast, The Dynamics of Everyday Life has lots more psychodynamic fun going on. And you can find out more at dynamicsofeveryday.life.